Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Summer Sharif. I'm the Executive Director of Twin Cities Diversity in Practice, and it's not often that I get to interrupt Prince, but we're going to go ahead and get started. You are at an info session for the TCDIP 1L Clerkship Program. Thank you all for joining us this evening. If you are comfortable, you can be camera on or off. We just ask that you stay muted until you have a question to ask or if you're speaking as a panelist. And we are going to be recording this session so that students who aren't able to join the live program are still able to get information about the 1L Clerkship Program. Joining me this evening are three panelists, along with my colleague Liz Niemer. Liz is the Programs and Communications Coordinator. And in a few minutes, I'll have the panelists introduce themselves. But in the meantime, the way we're going to kind of structure this afternoon, or this evening, is that I'll give you some background information about TCDIP, about our 1L Clerkship Program, and then you'll have the opportunity to hear directly from alumni of the program, including current students and attorneys, to just learn more about their experiences and how you can use their advice and tips as you apply for positions with the 1L Clerkship Program. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Twin Cities Diversity in Practice was started in 2005 by law firms here in the Twin Cities, and we are a nonprofit professional association of over 60 law firms and corporate legal departments. And we have a very specific view on inclusion and diversity, meaning that we are focused on the racial and ethnic diversity of attorneys of color here in the Twin Cities. And our goal is to attract, recruit, advance, and retain attorneys of color specifically in the Twin Cities, because our goal is to make this a more vibrant and inclusive legal community. Like I said, we have over 61, soon to be 62 law firms and corporations. We have law firms of all different sizes who are members, including firms that are based here in the Twin Cities, and then some national firms that have presences here in the Twin Cities as well. And then our corporate members are also of varying sizes, including Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, but folks that are based here in the Twin Cities. So the Twin Cities Diversity in Practice 1L Clerkship has been around for over a decade and has helped to launch the careers of law students of color here in the Twin Cities for just years. And our program is unique in that we form strategic partnerships between law firms and corporate legal departments who pair up to host a 1L clerk over the course of the summer. So we are doing the application process this fall for summer positions for summer 2021. So why should you consider applying for the TCDIP 1L Clerkship Program? Well, the first reason is that you will get exposure to senior leadership here in the Twin Cities, meaning that between our board of directors, our member reps, and folks within the law firms and corporate legal departments, everyone turns out and tries their best to try to meet all the 1L clerks and start to form relationships. We also provide professional development opportunities for the 1L clerks, both through TCDIP, like directly, and also through the law firms who are hosting you. Each 1L clerk is provided with a mentor, with an attorney outside of the law firm where you're working, so that you have the opportunity to build a relationship with someone who isn't working at the law firm where you will be next summer. And finally, we make sure that you are connected to alumni of the program, meaning that you have an opportunity to speak to someone who was in your shoes the year prior or a couple of years prior, so you know what to go in and expect. Who is eligible? This is a common question we get. And the program was created to promote the Twin Cities legal community to 1L students of color from here and from across the country. We publicize the program to students across the country, like I said, and to students in the Midwest and here in Minnesota. We are looking for qualified law students from racial and ethnic groups that are historically underrepresented in the legal profession. And this is all based on self-identification, meaning that no one is like checking your ID or something, but it's really based on how you identify and whether you consider yourself to be a person of color. And the 1L clerks are recruited by, like I said, so we publicize the program to the top 100 law schools nationwide. We also publicize it to historically Black colleges and like the universities, and to the law schools in the Midwest, because we are trying to expand a diverse pool of candidates. When applications open up, which I'll talk about in just a second, you will apply directly with the law firm, and all the instructions and job postings will be posted on our website. And once you apply, then the law firm takes over, and they are responsible for screening, selecting, and scheduling interviews, and they will make the hiring decisions directly. And once they hire a clerk, then they inform us, TCDIP, about the program, and then we connect with you as a 1L clerk and start to get you onboarded for the summer. So some important dates. The first important date is coming right up on Monday. So on Monday, November 16th, applications open. What that means is that you'll go to our website under law students, and you'll see and there's a drop down there, and you'll go down to the TCDIP 1L clerk page, and you will see job postings there. I highly recommend applying early, because firms will be hiring on a rolling basis. So first come, first served, and they will start to schedule interviews quickly. So if you are motivated to do so and you're interested, I highly recommend working on your resume and cover letter this weekend and be ready on Monday to start applying. The other hint or tip is that some firms will have their job postings up. Others are still working on them. So be sure to come back and check our website to see if other job postings are added. But we are hoping to have over 30 positions posted. So there's quite a few positions. We're really excited about that. We're just working on firming up a few more. And once those are available, those will be also posted on our website. And then starting this winter, which we already are in, but between like winter and spring of 2021, you will be notified of hiring decisions by the law firm. And then again, you want to go to our website on November 16th to look for the job postings, and to continuously come back to that website to see if like additional job postings are there. And we'll be keeping your law school career offices up to date on what's going on, so that they can let you know if additional job postings are available. But that's the basics of how the program works in terms of application and hiring and all that good stuff. But really, what the purpose of this program is for you to hear from folks who have done it before. So like I said, we have 3 folks who have previously done the program. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. And this is where, after they introduce themselves, you will have the opportunity to ask them questions. So I'm first going to ask, just randomly here, Samia, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Sumra. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, you can all. Okay, thank you. My name is Samia Young. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for attending this event. You're off to a great start. I graduated from the University of St. Thomas this year. During COVID, I made it through, and I was sworn into the Minnesota bar just a few weeks ago. And I'm expected to start as a new associate on December 1st at Robbins Kaplan. So it's so great to meet you all, and I'm looking forward to your questions, and it's good to speak with you.
Thanks, Samia. I'm going to kick it over to Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. It's really nice to see everyone here. I'm an associate at Clerkship Alumni. I've been there for a little over 2 years. I graduated from law school in 2018 from the University of Virginia. And then I went to college on the other side of the country at the University of Southern California. Summer, go Trojans. And I am what I guess people around here call a transplant. I grew up on the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, from Portland, Oregon. But you know, I found a home here in the Twin Cities, and I'm happy to answer any questions about moving here from a different place and living here and transitioning, all of that fun stuff.
Thanks, Stephanie. Fight on. I'm going to kick it over to Nicole.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Nicole Melton Mitchell. I am a 3L in a part-time professional program at University of Denver, but I do live here in the Twin Cities, and I commute for class, or I did before COVID. I summered this past summer at Stinson, and then partnering also with US Bank. It was a fabulous experience, and I am happy to answer any questions that you all might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. And that was a really good point. So I'm actually going to ask Samia and Stephanie to mention where they clerked when they were 1L and who they were paired with.
Yes, I will go ahead and start. So I actually clerked my 1L summer at Robbins Kaplan, and I was paired with Best Buy that summer.
Yeah, I clerked with, excuse me, Fox Rothschild my 1L summer, and I was paired with Ecolab.
Awesome. So I have some questions for our panelists, and if you have questions as students, you can either put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly. So just do whatever is most comfortable for you. We're a pretty manageable sized crowd here tonight. So just to kick things off, the first question for the panelists is, so why did you choose to participate in the TCDIP 1L clerkship program? And if someone wants to raise their hand, that's how we'll figure out who wants to go first rather than me calling on you.
I can
Nicole,
go.
I saw Nicole.
Go ahead.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Nicole, you go.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I attend school at the University of Denver, but I live here in the Twin Cities. And I was really looking for an opportunity to engage in the local legal community. Part of the challenge when you go to school someplace different than you live and you're sort of immersed or thinking that you might want to engage in a career where you're currently residing, is how do you start that networking process and incorporate yourself into that community? And particularly, what support services are available to you within the legal community and within communities of color as well. And so with that in mind, as I kind of was looking at opportunities and options for clerkships, one of the things that I looked at was some of the amenities basically that TCDIP offers in terms of that mentorship and partnership. And it was really something that I thought would be advantageous to me relative to incorporating myself in the community, as well as for me to gain some legal experience and mentorship and networking.
Stephanie, I think you wanted to go next, so.
Sure, I don't have much of a preference, but that was I'll piggyback off of what Nicole said, actually. I mean, in terms of networking, so I didn't really know any lawyers growing up, and I don't have any lawyers in my family. So in law school, my 1L year, I just looked for, I wasn't quite sure where, I was flexible in terms of where I wanted to work or where I wanted to move to after graduation. So I looked for 1L opportunities across the country, mainly 1L programs that would give me the opportunity to work at a law firm, which is, I think, still pretty rare in your 1L year, because you usually tend to do that in your 2L year. And so I wanted to do that to, one, get the experience, because I just didn't know what that entailed, but it sounded right like something that I was interested in at the time. And two, more importantly, to build that network and meet people in a profession who would be able to serve both as a formal and informal mentor to kind of help me navigate my path and figure out what I wanted to do, just because I didn't really, I didn't know, and I didn't really have anyone to reach out to. And so the TCDIP program was a really good avenue to start that. And I think it really helped me get a better understanding my 1L summer of what the profession entailed outside of school, beyond the theoretical aspects of law school, right? And what my actual career would look like, and just introducing me to people in different practice areas and things like that.
Awesome. Samia, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to what these two have said, but I would say with mine, I had known several alum who had actually gone through TCDIP. So a lot of my first semester of law school, prior to this application period, I actually, would go to coffee with different people and meet different people. And so a lot of people had recommended TCDIP. And the more that I looked into the program, the more that I became intrigued with it for a few reasons. I really liked what it stood for as far as, helping minority candidates and kind of the idea of, including us so that we can build this inclusive legal community, right, in the Twin Cities. So I really like what the program stood for. And I like the fact that it was something that I a resource for me and for other minority candidates as well. And I definitely wanted to take advantage of that resource. And so I took the advice of my mentor. So I just add that.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad all three of you applied and were part of the program, because now you get to share all the stuff with future Winall clerks. I have a question specifically for Samia and Stephanie, because Samia, you're about to start as an attorney at Robbins Kaplan on December 1st, and Stephanie, you've been practicing. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how the clerkship program helped your career develop overall, from like being a 1L to 2L and after graduation. And I'm going to start with Stephanie on this one.
Yeah, sure. I alluded to it earlier a little bit. I mean, one, I guess kind of from the ground up, it just got my feet wet in terms of just learning more about the profession, what it entailed, and introducing me to people who would help me navigate that career path. Let's see, in my TCDIP 1L summer, I had the pleasure of working in two main practice areas, splitting the summer between corporate transactional work and litigation. I'm currently a litigator for 90% of my practice area, but it was a very valuable summer for me to kind of get my feet wet in those two primary practice areas and see what it really meant to do litigation types of work. I'm an introvert, so I was kind of, hesitant to really even look into litigation as an option, because, I didn't want to go into court. I'm not great at public speaking, or I wasn't great at public speaking, things like that, right? But I loved writing. I liked the research aspect. I did well in my research and writing classes in law school. And so I think that program offered a unique way for me to try something that I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable about. And in environments where people were supportive, I had a lot of mentors, and just to kind of experiment and see what I wanted to do. Fast forward, I guess, to my 2L summer, I went straight up into a litigation boutique firm because it was something that just seemed really interesting to me, and that was, I preferred it, at least over my small little 3-month experience of doing corporate and litigation work. And so I think it just kind of provided that foundational path for me to navigate my career. And then also just solidifying my wanting to move to the Twin Cities and work here and develop my professional path here. I think when my first year of starting as an attorney, I just moved permanently to the Twin Cities, or to Minneapolis that summer to take the bar exam, everything, that crazy stuff coming out of just graduating law school. But and I relied on the TCDIP events and networking events, even the casual social events, to help me become more acquainted to the community as a full-time attorney. And I still am pretty active in the events now and the opportunities that TCDIP has. And I think it's a good way. It has been a good way, and it still is a good way for me to meet people that I otherwise wouldn't be as likely to meet, I think. And that helps me, continue to develop my network, and helps me develop professionally as an attorney, or as a junior attorney currently.
And Samia, I'm going to kick it over to you on that same question. And then there's also a question from Casey Stewart. that's directed towards you. So if you want to answer both of those, we'll make it a compound question.
Okay, so so the question is, how did TCDIP kickstart my career? And for me, being a brand new attorney, I can remember it just like yesterday, my 1L summer, right? I just graduated from law school. And I always tell, law students that I speak with that TCDIP really did set the tone for me after 1L year. Like how Stephanie said, it is extremely rare to get into a law firm and to get that type of experience. So to have had the opportunity, as a 1L to work at a law firm over the summer, I can't say enough how much that did for me. So I'll kind of break down the work piece as briefly as possible, and then also just the networking piece as well, because I would say they were both very important in kickstarting my career. As far as the work piece goes, just getting your foot in the door through TCDIP cannot be understated at all. As we know, these positions are extremely competitive. And so once I got in the door, I was able to really shine, right? It was once my foot was in the door, I could show that I could do the work. I showed the attorneys, that I was a good candidate, but so much of that struggle, and again, going back to the inclusivity, right, is getting your foot in the door and getting those types of opportunities in the first place. And so I would say that TCDIP most certainly set me up for a successful summer. Now, once you get your foot in the door, obviously the work and how you conduct yourself at the firm and your return offer back for 1L is on you, but just getting in there is a big part of it. And I would also say that once you've done a summer at a big law firm or a small law firm, mid law firm, it doesn't matter. Once you have that summer of work experience, not only are you able to put those skills you've learned in your 1L year, your legal writing and research skills to use, but you're also very valuable going into, OCI or 2L summer. And if you're, going beyond or returning to your firm. So, I mean, me going to Robbins Kaplan is the result of me doing the first summer through TCDIP, getting an offer my second summer, and then a permanent offer, which I do not believe would have happened if I didn't do my 1L summer through TCDIP. So I'm thankful for that. That's a mouthful. I'll be brief on the networking. I think just having people to connect over the summer, in addition to your other summer associates, seasoned attorneys, new attorneys at different levels that have worked with TCDIP was extremely helpful. Because sometimes when you're working at your firm, you can get advice from people within the firm, but it's also important to have those connections outside the firm and to also have personal mentors and get different perspectives as well. And so I think TCDIP provides a great resource to do that. And so it definitely played a huge part in my career, as I've stated, and I'm thankful for that. And was there another question that you mentioned, Summer, that was asked here?
Yeah. So the question was from Casey. I don't know, Casey, do you want to ask your question directly, or I can just read it out?
No, I can ask it. Thank you, Summer.
You're welcome.
I was just asking, of course, no one could have anticipated COVID-19 coming, and I'm sure that was, just alarming and extremely scary for someone, or it could have been, I'm not sure, I don't want to assume, but I imagine that could have been scary just graduating from law school. So, just kind of not knowing in this climate, I just wanted to just ask if you would share any tips on staying connected while you were in law school with your Robbins Kaplan family, just TCDIP, just staying connected with your legal community. And I'm asking because as a 1L, it's just kind of hard to do anything outside of studying, getting ready for finals. But I have made a lot of connections and I want to stay as connected as possible. And of course, COVID does present challenges like, you can do virtual coffees and things of that nature, but just staying connected in any way possible. I just wanted to know if you would be open and sharing some advice on staying connected with your legal family.
Sure, yeah, I think, Casey, that's a really good point, right? And a really good question. And it's something, and I'll be honest, I'll say that it was something that I struggled with, having completed my last semester of law school in the midst of COVID. And then also with this, ambiguity as to what's going to happen, when we start, is it remote and these types of things. I don't know about everybody else, but I was not a natural Zoomer. And I thought it was really awkward at first. It was really hard for me to get on the wave of scheduling Zoom happy hours and Zoom coffees, because I too, Stephanie, am an introvert. But with that being said, I think that that's what we have to do. You all are definitely in a unique time. Where you can't do the face-to-face stuff as much, but I do think that there's a chance to kind of turn that around and use it for your benefit, and to look at Zoom and a technology as a way to reach even more people, since it is something you can do virtually. And what I would recommend, what I had started doing, was personally sending out invitations with Zoom links to people that I wanted to connect with. And really just taking the initiative, especially if there are people you're already connected to, that makes it easier if you built that, type of conversation, to reach out and say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Law school is going good. I'd love to catch up with you. Do you have 10 minutes, just to chat with me, to catch up with me, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, those types of things. And I would say, as far as meeting new attorneys and just making new connections, don't be afraid to reach out, because we're all in this together. And so we know, we can't now go and meet new attorneys in person all the time, but you can most certainly still email people, open up conversations, reach out on LinkedIn, and then go ahead and schedule that Zoom meeting. I think you have to try everything that you can, because you do want to still build those connections, because hopefully things will eventually go back to where we're face to face, and you want to lay that foundation. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit and answers your question.
It did. Thank you. And thank you, Summer.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to pivot to a question to Nicole, and Brandy, I'll come back to your question in just a second. But so since you, Nicole, were just in the program this past summer, I was wondering if you have any tips for students who are going to be applying for next summer in terms of how they can best present themselves and have the best possible application for next summer.
Sure. So I would say a couple things, and recognize that the environment is a little bit different than where we found ourselves, this time last year, even frankly, the early part of this year. Given that you're likely going to be doing interviewing and that sort of thing virtually, I think you really have to make sure that you tell a compelling story in terms of your cover letter and your resume. And there are some very specific questions that are in some of the application processes. And so you want to make sure that you answer those questions in a way that you can utilize your experience and your resume as proof points to articulate why you are the best candidate for the role. And in some cases, it's almost like your cover letter can operate as sort of a mini essay that explains why you're interested in the program and gives a little bit of summary about your background. And really, not just why you're interested in the program per se, but what your interest is in that particular firm. My observation was that with these firms, they're utilizing them as recruitment tools. And so when you're selected to be a clerk for one of these programs, and when you're submitting your resume and your cover letter, you are really signing yourself up for a 10-week-long interview. And, these firms typically are pipelining, basically. And so they're not going to recruit more clerks than what they have the space for. And TCDIP is it's kind of a prestigious clerkship within the firm. And there is a level of intentionality in terms of the recruitment process that happens. I mean, I went on 2 sets of interviews, and I probably met just about everybody on the recruiting committee at the firm. So what you really want to make sure of is that you're putting your best foot forward so you can get that initial call, because all it takes, I mean, kind of to Samia's point, it gets you in the door. And then once you're in that door, once you're called for that interview, once you're, probably Zooming through that interview, that's your opportunity then to really shine and to really, frankly, market yourself. You should be thinking about yourself, the CEO of YOU. And so this is where your marketing department comes into full effect. You don't want to exaggerate, but you want to certainly illuminate and amplify your strengths and how they in particular would be applicable to law firm work, and then also to the corporate partner work as well. Because one other thing that was called out to me during the interview process is that in my cover letter, I not only spoke to why I had an interest in the firm, but also why I had an interest in the corporate partner. And I think sometimes because you're applying to the firm, that may not be top of mind. So those are just a couple of things that I observed in terms of what happened or what kind of feedback I got once I actually started the interviewing process.
Nicole, I love that. I'm gonna make a T-shirt, CEO of YOU. That is amazing. I'm gonna use it, and I will credit you for that. All right, I'm gonna pivot to Samia and Stephanie, because you two have seen other students coming up, and Stephanie, especially in like your role at your firm, I know that you help with the recruiting and interviewing side of things. And so I was curious, how can students set themselves apart in a good way during the hiring and interviewing process? We've all heard the horror stories, but I want to know about what students can do to set themselves apart in a good way. And Nicole, if you want to also add into this, because I know you have some other experience as well before coming to law school, I'd love to hear that as well. But why don't we start off with Stephanie on this question?
Yeah, sure. The first one, I think first advice I have is, it sounds obvious, it sounds kind of silly, but, when you've got a lot of applications you got to put together and send out, sometimes things fall through the cracks, right? You really have to pay attention to detail. I would say, dot your I's, cross your T's in your application materials, whether it be, whatever you have to submit, the resume, cover letter, the questions that you have to answer. There shouldn't be any typos. Everything should be, read it through a couple of times, have a friend read it for you too, just for a fresh set of eyes, because that's your first impression. And, the only impression that you get or that you provide through to the firm that you're applying to when they go through the initial screening process. It's a very detail-oriented profession, and we all make mistakes. I make my fair share of typos, but before you submit your application, just be careful and do a read through. And I think sometimes printing out a hard copy of your final application materials just to do a final read through, and I find that helps me catch silly little mistakes I would normally gloss over. So that's my advice number one. Take your time to put together your application carefully and make sure it's good and free of typos and small mistakes or grammatical errors before you submit it. Two, well, actually, let me back up. And also that says a lot too, right? Because I'm going to make it kind of a difficult analogy. Try to not make it difficult. But so I'm like an artist and designer kind of like as part of my hobbies. And so when you think of like negative space, and that's something that's like not some, like if you're drawing on a piece of paper, you're drawing something affirmative on a paper, but like the white is the negative space. And so sometimes the negative space does a lot. And so like when you have something that's free of mistakes, that tells a lot initially. I think that gives a good impression. It's like, oh, this is a really nice, clean application, right? And so I think that does more than, if you have one little typo that someone just happens to catch, a lot of times people won't catch it, right? But like, maybe someone from a recruiting committee notices that, and then they're looking at someone else's application. They're like, oh, well, they spelled this correctly, and it looks nice and just fresh, and it just, just something that just is glaringly obvious when there is a mistake. That makes sense. But anyways, number two, I think maybe when you get to the interviewing process, do research on where you're interviewing, the people who you're interviewing with. You're usually provided with a list of the attorneys and members of the recruiting team who you will be meeting with. So just do a little bit of reading up on them. I think it shows if you try to make some sort of reference that you've done a little bit of research about the firm or your interviewers. But at the same time, you know, be yourself. It's not supposed to be some sort of memory test of any sort. And especially as a 1L, you know, you're not expected to know a lot about the legal practice. You don't have to know what you're interested in, what practice areas you're interested in. That's okay. You don't, you know, there's no need to try to make up something more than you know, or try to force an interest when you don't really know whether or not that's an interest, if that makes sense. But I think there's a fine line between being well prepared, showing that you've done your homework and your research, and still being able to show up and kind of be yourself during your interview. I know on Zoom, I assume most of your interviews will be on Zoom or some other virtual platform, that can be a little harder to feel more comfortable and give that sense of yourself. But, you know, there are positives to it too, I think. You know, you're not going from place to place. I'm a klutz. I worried about, you know, walking around on my heels, following someone moving on to the next office, things like that, right? So you can think about like that. There's pros and cons. And at least, you know, if you're klutz like me, or there's other these like small minor worries that can make you feel better if you're just doing a Zoom or virtual interview. So I think that's all I have to say. I apologize for the negative space thing. Sorry,
no,
the negative space analogy was complex.
No, I found that helpful. But I just had a question, just a quick first question for all three of you. Do any of you think that the cover letter should be longer than a page?
Nope.
Okay,
no.
So everyone heard that. No, the answer was a resounding no. The cover letter should be 1 page. How about your resume? Should it be longer than 1 page?
Nope, unless, in my opinion, if you are a, you know, second career, like you've already had a career before you decided to become a lawyer, go to law school. I think that's the only exception you can make if it's more than 1 page.
Great. And Nicole, it sounds like you agree with that, because I know you had a career before law school.
Yeah, that's right. I had a long career before law school, and I think you're spot on, Stephanie. I mean, it really, when you get beyond 1 page, you're going back a couple of decades oftentimes. And, you know, even with having a career before law school, I was still able to condense it down to 1 page, because quite frankly, you might have tons of experience, but the reality is people are curious as, you know, what have you done lately? And that's what you really want to condense down to 1 page. And then you also want to pick and choose what the pertinent aspects of the experience that you have, or your educational experience, or your volunteer, what's going to be pertinent to the skill set that you're advocating or advertising when you're having your interviews. I would say too, fit really, really, really matters. And when you're interviewing, even though these are shorter term engagements, they have long-term implications. And you don't want to be in a situation where you find that it's not the right fit for you. And so while you're interviewing and you're talking to the recruiting committee, you're looking to gain experience in other networking opportunities and things like that while you're at the firm. But you also should be making sure that the firm meets your needs. And so it shouldn't really be a one-sided conversation. I'm not suggesting that you interrogate, you know, the recruiting committee, but I do think you need to have some really thoughtful questions and find out whether or not you think, just culturally speaking, that the law firm is going to be a good fit for you. And I think you'll find that a lot of the attorneys that you'll meet with will actually say that one of the things that they like the most is the fit, because you're spending a lot of time with these folks for over the course of a couple of months. And so fit really, really matters in my mind. And so in addition to, as Stephanie mentioned, doing the research on the folks that you're meeting with, do a little research on the firm and the culture in the firm, and then at the corporate site as well. And be prepared to ask questions to ascertain whether or not that particular firm is the best one for you. Because I think in so many cases, you just want the experience and you just want to get in the door. but you don't want to sour yourself because of a negative experience because you didn't have a good fit culturally.
Good point. I'm just going to make a couple of quick follow-up points on the issue of typos. I've heard from recruiting professionals at the law firms that they are really looking out for that. So 2 quick tips. So I think someone said to just print out and read your materials in hard copy. Really important, and it's super important to get multiple people to take a look at your resume, at your cover letter and resume. So ask your career office for help, ask friends for help, but the more eyes that can look over something, the better. You should not hit send or apply before it's been approved. The second thing is apply for as many positions as possible. So, if we have 32 positions open, I frankly would recommend apply for all of them, right? But going back to that question of fit, that's something you can evaluate as you get called back interviews. And that's something you can do. But to just at least get your foot on the door, apply for as many positions as possible. And the last thing was about supporting documents. I'm going to pick up that question first and then go back to another one because I think this goes well with the question around application. So Olivia, would you like to ask your question? Or should I read it out for you?
I can ask it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question is about additional support documents. Sometimes firms allow for other documents other than like a resume or a cover letter. Specifically, I have kind of a unique situation where I left law school and now I'm coming back and re-enrolling. So I'm wondering if it would be helpful to include a separate document to kind of talk about why I left and then what I've been doing in the meantime, which is summarized in my resume, but I don't know if that would be appropriate or not.
I'll start. I mean, I don't think there's a definitive answer. I think in general, the fewer additional optional documents, the better. That being said, though, I mean, like you recognize you have a unique situation. If you feel that an additional document explaining your situation and what you've been doing in that interim period would be helpful and add something in addition to your resume and cover letter, I think it's fine to do that, but I would limit the amount of text that you put into maybe just one paragraph, like a succinct explanation. But I think in general, I mean, I don't know your situation, obviously, but I think your cover letter and resume should be able to at least give a general sense to whoever is evaluating your application to, at the outset, what your situation and your background is. But again, I think it's something that you want to evaluate for yourself. If you think that there's a need to provide additional information, I would just keep it short. You don't want to, recruiters and whoever else is reviewing the application materials, they get a lot of applications, right? And so you want to make their job as easy as possible, but also, not at the expense of not being able to present yourself fully. I think that's my 2 cents at least.
Yeah, that's my worry, is that it'll get glossed over, although, I have that interim period in my resume highlighted, and if I can fit it in the cover letter, I'll do so as well. I'm just trying to kind of find a balance of giving them enough information, but like you said, not too much. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as a general rule, I think you don't want to, provide too much additional, documents or text or things for the recruiters to review. But again, it's a case-by-case basis, and I think that's something that you also want to talk through with your career center at your school, and just for anyone in general on the who's attending the program here tonight too. If you have some very specific situation tailored to your background and you're not sure how you want to account for that in your application, I would recommend talking to your career services group. They're very helpful.
Thank you.
Just wanted to pause to see if anyone else wanted to jump in on that question or had an additional perspective on it before I move on.
Just having done this a year ago, in many of the application processes, they actually ask you to describe in your cover letter any unique circumstances why you're applying for the program. It's almost like a a mini essay and not what you would think of as like your traditional cover letter in my mind. And I think that would be just the optimal place to include that kind of information. And it makes it such that it gives you the opportunity to craft a narrative that really points to both what your unique circumstances are, why you're uniquely suited for both the program and for that position. And it's going to be something that they're going to look at universally anyway. So to the extent that you could include those additional circumstances in that cover letter and as part of a response to the questions that they're asking or the elements that they ask you to include in that cover letter, I think that really shows that you're sort of a rule follower, and that you're also respectful of their time, given, as Stephanie mentioned, they get a ton of resumes and what have you to go through.
If I could just briefly piggyback on that, Olivia, whatever the gap might be, if you put it in your cover letter and you phrase it as a point to distinguish yourself, like whatever it is, flip it. It could be good, it could be bad, whatever the case is, like make it work for you in the cover letter and say, having, come back and, stronger than ever, whatever the case might be, make it work for you and sell yourself with it in the cover letter. Use it to distinguish yourself instead of explaining why, if that makes sense. I would just, do it like that.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
To me, it sounds like you're saying that you should use some legal skills there to make the case for yourself. I like it. Awesome. So I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. And I'm first going to start with Stephanie. So there was a question about whether it was difficult or challenging to study for the bar being, let me just make sure, if you found it hard to prepare for the bar being out of state. I know that you moved here from like Virginia and going to school in Virginia to the bar here in Minnesota. So I was just curious if you had any thoughts about that, along with why did you choose to come and practice here in the Twin Cities?
Yeah, for the first question about studying for the bar, I don't think it made a difference where I was. I just chose to stay in Virginia because my lease wouldn't end until that July. So I wanted to stay as long as possible before giving up and having to, pay a month without me actually living there, right? I don't know how much you know about the bar studying program. I think honestly it's a little too early at your point as a 1L in your first semester to think about the bar, but I suppose it doesn't hurt to, get some general context, right? So, it's most of the bar review programs are online now. So they make it very easy in terms of like tutorials. That they give you a schedule and you just follow the schedule to the best of your ability and do the tutorials like a couple of times a day and then do your assignments. So in terms of that, it was all remote before COVID was even a thing. So it didn't matter where you were. And for Minnesota specifically, it's part of a thing called the UBE. It's like a uniform system. So that just means the content is similar to the content in a lot of other states. And so I was studying with my law school friends and they were studying for the New York bar. And, we were pretty much learning the same stuff for a good portion of the summer. So no, it wasn't hard at all. It was a little bit of I'll keep this short because it's not entirely relevant to TCDIP, but like it was a little bit stressful in the moving process because I had to like bring everything to Minneapolis. And then I had a couple more weeks where I'm like, okay, I still need to crack down and make sure I didn't forget all my material. So, and then my stuff was still all in boxes and, my credit card company thought apparently my credit card got like stolen or something because the charges weren't going through or whatever. But, that's logistical stuff. That's life. You can figure it out. But short answer is no, it's perfectly fine. Wherever you're studying, it doesn't have to be the place that you're going to take the exam. The second question is, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh yeah. The second question, why I decided to come to the Twin Cities, right? Or what made me want to be here, right, Summer?
Yes, correct.
Oh, yes. Okay. I explained at the outset of this, I was flexible while I was in law school in terms of where I wanted to or where I could end up after law school. I have family here, my aunt, uncle, cousin, so it wasn't like a completely random place. I didn't want to go back home to the Portland, Oregon area just because it's somewhere I grew up. Like, I'll go to Target and the cash register cashier is, someone who was from my high school marching band section. I just didn't want any of that, right? So that was my only no. But I think the TCDIP program helped. Well, and it was just kind of a, in-person experience in the Twin Cities. And also when I interviewed at firms, people are like, oh, this is kind of like Portland, Oregon too. Like we have these like green LEED certified buildings people like to bike. And I just thought it was really silly. That was just kind of a marketing pitch for me to, be interested in the cities. But after, I spent that summer, I came back for a school year externship too, actually. So I spent part of like the fall and part of the winter. And it really is similar to my hometown, but also, like I wanted like a good mix, I guess, between like a larger city feel, but not quite being a larger city, but still having like the food, cultural, and recreation options that, a place would offer. And so I think that's pretty much why I decided to move here permanently and stay. It really is a good mix of things, and also, traffic is an LA traffic, and I went to college in LA, so I can attest to that.
Yeah, definitely don't miss the LA traffic. But I'm going to pause, or I'm gonna. I think I saw Gypsy unmuted or on camera, and you had a question, Gypsy, about work-life balance. Do you want to go ahead and announce that?
Hi, yeah. So I'm Gypsy. I'm a 1L at Seton Hall here in New Jersey. So I have my question is normally or generally like, what are your hours like? I guess I know now in COVID it's a little different because we're all at home and we're all supposed to be available all the time for everything, even though that's not really the case. But what do you guys have a work-life balance, or do you see yourself like clocking in like 2,000 hours a year? As like I've heard good stories and I've heard like horror stories, so I just wanted to know what it was like for you guys.
Sure, and I'm going to start with Samia if you want to talk about what it was like your 1L and 2L summers, because you've had some experience with that, and I know you also clerked during the school year. So, and what did you observe amongst other lawyers?
Yeah, that's good. I'll talk about that because I can't speak as to being an associate because I haven't started yet, but I'm definitely, so here's what I would say. As far as being a summer associate goes, I was really intentional about not making it about staying there until 10 o'clock at night or midnight. And the reason for that is that as a summer associate, you're really there, to get the experience, to learn and to network. And the workload, although it might feel like a lot because it's new, it is manageable. And I just personally recommend trying not to stay there all night because my thinking was that, well, if I do end up working at a firm, then I'll have to bill long hours and things. But while I'm a summer associate, I'm going to, try to keep a manageable schedule and go home and enjoy the activities. So I was really intentional about not actually being there day in and day out. And most days I left, I would say no later than 6 o'clock unless there was, a networking event or something like that. So it was very manageable. And that I would say my first summer, I was there a little bit later, but my second summer, it was like 8 hours a day because at that point I was a 2L and I knew, okay, I'm probably going to work at a firm and I'm not trying to, start billing those types of hours at this point. So yeah, try to be easy on yourself. As far as what I've seen with other attorneys, I think, and Stephanie's probably much better to speak to about this, but because I think it depends on so many different factors as to what work-life balance looks at. Robbins Kaplan, they only do litigation at the firm. And so the nature of that, from what I've seen, is that it ebbs and flows. And also how much you work and when depends on, when trial is, what case teams you're on, but also on how you individually manage your time. And so I think there are various factors that go into work-life balance. But I mean, I'll be honest, from what I've seen, it's not, there are times where it can be busier, but I've also seen times that, aren't as busy, just depending on what's going on. So it seems like it ebbs and flows. And I'll let Stephanie kind of speak a little bit more about that since she has more experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally on point. It does ebb and flow, and I do have a trial coming up in January, so it is flowing, if we want to use that word. But that being said, I think Samia covered it pretty well. In general, I think the billable hour requirement for most of the mid-sized to larger firms in the cities is between, I think, 1,750 to 2,000. So Gypsy, it is true that people will have to work, 2,000 or bill 2,000 hours a year. And by billing, that's, like case-related work, but there's things like marketing and business development type things that aren't necessarily part of the billing factor. So it does get a little tricky, and it's something that you just kind of have to play around with and see how to balance your time. But I think firms do a good job understanding that, in your first couple of years, you're trying to figure out how the billable requirements work, how the billable hours work, and also, you take longer than more senior associates or attorneys would on assignments too. So that's a factor too. I mean, all of it is a lot of just kind of, speaking from experience too, like you're playing around to, figure out what's working, what's not working. With working from home, it's a little trickier because, I'm not available all the time, but, it's just convenient because my computer is there or my email is just open, right? And that's just convenient for everyone in general. And so I think, it's a good lesson, it's a good lesson, I think, to take even beyond COVID, is that you have to set your boundaries. A lot of your work-life balance is, I think, dependent on your ability to set the boundaries and being able to manage your time that way. People will respect your boundaries, but I mean, if there's something that needs to be filed with the court, you're expected to be available that day and around for your team until that document gets filed. But the next day, if there isn't really that much to do, you're not expected, generally speaking, you're not expected to be there for the sake of being there, right? And you can do other things, or run errands or something, or finish work early for the day, things like that. So it's a lot of it just kind of balancing, figuring it out for yourself. And then as a summer associate or a law clerk, there's no need to stay until 10 p.m. Don't stay until 10 p.m. I remember my 1L summer, I think sometimes, usually around like 5:30-ish, people would be like, what are you still doing here? I didn't know you were still here. So I thought that was kind of funny. But that's, it's very nice of the, the attorneys at the firm to, remind you that you're a summer associate. You gotta, have fun. You're a law student. You're not here to, bill a full year's worth of hours, right? And a lot of times there's, events that are put together specifically for summer associates. They're just fun get-togethers for you to know the firm better, know your potential workmates better. And I would say those are all mandatory. You should attend those for sure. I think that's all I have to add.
Thank you both. I'm just going to do a quick lightning round here. If you have any final thoughts in like 30 seconds or less about applications, because right now it's all about applications, because Monday we're going to open up applications and post the jobs and people are going to apply. Any final pieces of advice either you want to emphasize or make sure folks know before they log on Monday? I'll start with Samia on this one.
Yes, just really quickly. So a few things: apply right away. Like how Summer said, you're busy, but don't wait. It might be a long weekend. Review your resume. Please review your writing sample. Have somebody else look at your writing sample. They do look at those. And when you get an interview, be sure to show that you're passionate. Be sure to lay it on the line. Don't be scared to be happy at the fact that, hey, I got this opportunity, and let your personality come through. And then finally, if, once the interview is complete, be sure to write thank you cards, even though, it's via Zoom. Send those thank you cards out. A lot of people look for those, and it'll also make you stand out. So I think those would be my quick last minute tips.
Thank you, Samia. Stephanie.
Yeah. Again, with your application, don't wait until the last minute to do them, because then you'll find yourself in a situation where you got, the lovely typos and you didn't catch them. So, do them early, have plenty of time to put everything together. Start now if you can. And then I agree with the thank you notes. I find them very nice when someone leaves me a thank you note. In fact, I think for the most part, most people send either email or mail some sort of thank you note that if you don't do it, I feel like it only puts a little negative spotlight on you, unfortunately. So that's something to keep in mind. And, during the interviews, I would just kind of remember 1 or 2 points that you want to kind of raise in your thank you note, because I think that puts a nice personal touch.
Thank you both so much for your time. Nicole did have to drop off, but I know she would echo what you're saying. But if folks have questions, you can reach out to us at Diversity in Practice at info@diversityinpractice.org. Like I said, the applications are opening up on Monday, and applications are accepted on a rolling basis. So be sure to keep all that in mind. And thank you all for joining us this evening. I really appreciate your time, and good luck with finals and with your applications. Take care, everyone.